Welcome back to Kirk Plain, folks. This is part 2 for Cutters for Christ. We talked about in the book of Mark, chapter 5, about the demon-possessed man being found out in the tubes, or the tombs, run around in a dead man's land, which is basically the condemned earth, the death, the destruction of humanity, the useless ways and means we live our lives without God, and doing nothing but, I don't know, behaving like dead men do. And one of the very curious things that I wanted to touch on again was about how it doesn't matter the number of demons or the problems or the circumstances of our lives. A life without God is a life that ends in destruction, mental fatigue, physical impairments, destructive behaviors, the bondage of chains and sin and death, and self-destructive behaviors like cutting and screaming and yelling and spitting and frothing at the mouth and feeling condemned and scaring other people with our behavior. And I needed to apologize about making fun of activists from the Cutters for Christ video that I first put out, and because it's not a funny thing, it's a very serious issue to live a life where you're unhappy. And so those demons that we all have or had are something that we need to take to Christ and unload those things forever. We need to be healed. We need to become of a sound mind, to be able to be reclothed and seated next to Jesus Christ spiritually at His service and under His Spirit, be led to care and show compassion on others. And that's what the whole summation of Mark chapter 5 about the demon-possessed man's about, as he came back to his sound mind. And I likewise want to carry that concept into the real truth that goes along with that. And it has to do with the book of Luke. I'm going to find it here in a moment. Chapter 15, verse 11. And what this deals with is the parable of the lost son. And I'm going to read the whole thing because it tells you how the Father rejoices when those who were held captive by this world of being separated from God and the illusion of pleasure and enjoyment and wealth, of being a slave to the money and the things of the world, the gold, the silver, the popularity, the lavish lifestyles, the indulgences of our flesh, and how we sometimes would give up the things that are good for us because our flesh gets carried away in its consumption. And let's not too critically judge ourselves or anyone else, but let's just be aware that the best reward is to return to our Father in heaven and to appreciate the life that can be lived by knowing Him and living the life that He's created us for. That's going to bring ultimate satisfaction. All the other things are just the trappings and the circumstantial things that bring temporary satisfaction. And the real truth is, this could be very related to the gentleman that was in Mark chapter 5, because they're both around the pig fields. Okay, so let's read here. Chapter 15, verse 11. The parable of the lost son. And he said, and this is Jesus speaking, a certain man had 2 sons. And the younger or immature one said to his father, Father, give me the portion of goods that falls to me from mine inheritance. And so he divided it all to them, all their livelihood. And not many days after, the younger immature son gathered all his things together and journeyed to a far country, and there wasted his possessions with prodigious or prodigal living. Whatever that word means, we could look at that, but it's just wasteful living. But when he had spent all, there arose a severe famine in the land, and he began to be in want, in need, and lacking. And then he went and joined himself to a citizen of that land. And he said to him that basically, and he went and sent him to his fields to feed the pigs, feed the swine. And that's a relationship to how the last discussion about the demons entering the swine after they were cast out of the one man that was running around out there in the graveyards and in the fields, screaming and yelling and needing a demon cast out. And the demons were legions, and these legions, or 10,000 demons, went into 2,000 swine and ran off down the ridge, because that's where Jesus gave him permission to go, and he commanded him to leave that one young man. And so what we can look here is